Hello and welcome to my creative castle. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for choosing to come back, hang out, and talk yarn with me. And thank you for your patience while I briefly introduce myself to anybody who might be new to my channel. Hi, my name's May. I love yarn. I love to knit and crochet. Those are my hobbies. And I also happen to have been born visually impaired, legally blind, and completely colorblind. So I really mostly knit and crochet by feel. And today I'm going to be knitting with you. If you are visually impaired, I'm holding up two circular knitting needles with a project on it. Uh, and is crochet on the bottom and it's knit on top. We just got it on the knitting needles. So it is in the Knit Pigs, and we crochet Cot-Lin, which is a DK weight yarn. It is 70% Tangwees cotton. It is 30% linen. It is in the color Nightfall, which is described on their website as a really dark blue with maybe just like some purple hues. So I think it's supposed to represent, like the night sky, I think. And that's why it's called Nightfall. So anyways, if you are a returning viewer, you probably saw a few weeks ago, right? I was working on a skirt, right? The top half of a skirt that was going to be knit on the top and then crochet on the bottom. And I was redoing that Astoria tonal skirt in the Cot-Lin because I just wanted to see what it looked like, right? I wanted to kind of learn about fibers and how they behave. They're both DK weight yarns, so I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to kind of compare, like cotton and linen versus, wools and see kind of how those things worked up. So, and that skirt is complete, by the way. You will see on Friday for Finish It Friday. We will discuss it. But just one thing that I did want to make clear for anybody who's wanting to make that pattern. Because we work it in the round in crochet, there is decreases in that skirt. And because we're working in the round and we don't turn, the decreases spiral. Like they don't completely stack up vertically. I think in that type of design on a skirt, with that wave and the way it's supposed to be really, loose and flowy, I think it works out fine. But, that might bother some people, right? Anyway, just so that anybody knows who's looking at that going, I want to make that. It's just something to keep in mind that if you're the kind of person that might bother, you know, just know that. So, anyways, I have been wanting to make a top to go with that in the color Nightfall as well, like a tank top or a summer top to go with it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm struggling. I'm definitely struggling to make the top. I've had to frog. I started knitting. I started it top down. Now I'm working bottom up with crochet. My mind is just struggling with it. I'm going to be real with you. And that can sometimes happen as somebody who designs my own patterns. Yeah, that can happen where you have to do it over and over and over again. And so you know what? It's if you are trying to like dabble in design and creating your own patterns, don't give up just because you might have to rip out your first and your second and your third attempt. If you really want to make something, keep trying, right? Keep trying. I have to tell myself that. Sometimes I have to take breaks from projects. Sometimes I have to set projects down for a while. Sometimes I have to frog projects and just say, you know what? That's not going to work, or that's the wrong yarn, okay? Sometimes we have to say that's the wrong yarn for that project. So, anyways, something I know some of you are probably wondering, like, why are we sitting and stitching today? Because it's not Whip Wednesday, right? Whip Wednesday is usually the day where we do like a craft and chat, a sit and stitch. And we also do that on Mondays with May, which we did do on Monday. I was working on the Mal with Juan the Yarn Addict. No, I'm not finished yet. I'm still behind on the Mal. Probably will not finish when everybody else does. And you know what? That's okay, right? Knitting and crochet is not a competition, right? I mean, we're all kind of learning and doing things at our own pace. So, and I kind of just really do feel too warm right now to work on like a big woolly project. I'm just too warm to do it. So, but you know, it's going to be cooling down here soon. So, hopefully I'll pick that up and feel like holding a lap full of wool again soon. But I'm on here on Thursday for a particular reason. This week I chose to come on Thursday, and because occasionally on my channel I do things called, not your therapist Thursday, right? And why do I call it that? Because if you don't know, I used to work in mental health. I used to work as a therapist, as a counselor in college counseling, and I loved my job. I really did. I loved working in mental health, loved working in therapy. It's something that I think is so important today. And I'm not licensed anymore to practice in mental health. So that's why I say I'm not your therapist, because I'm not here to be anybody's therapist anymore, right? If you need help, I encourage people to, go to therapy, or, read or look for resources, or, you know, uh, address any kind of issues that you might be having going on in your life. But I'm not here to be your therapist, because I'm not licensed, and we don't have like that kind of individual relationship, right? And I'm not licensed, and that doesn't have anything to do with any kind of legal or ethical issue at all, right? I'm not working, and I wanted to maintain my license for a while, and the person whose home I moved into said he would pay to maintain my license so I could return to work, and then he didn't. He just decided that he didn't need to continue to pay that bill. And at that time in my life, I couldn't afford it. I absolutely did not have the money to pay to the state to, renew my license. So that didn't happen for me. So I'm not licensed anymore. And yes, I know you're looking around and go, but you buy all this yarn all the time. Yeah, I do. So things are different. There's a different financial arrangement going on now. So yes, there's money to purchase yarn, but I think at this point, if I wanted to renew my license, I'd probably have to take an exam with the state. And since I don't have any immediate plans to go back to work, I'm not going to go through the ordeal of taking that exam. But anyways, that was a long and unnecessary explanation. It had nothing to do with what I want to talk about today. But I wanted to come on and talk today because, this video is for September 11th. And so I live in the United States, and for many of us in the United States, September 11th can be a difficult day, right? It can be like a heavy day, and it can bring up a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings. Even though, it was the day of the largest terrorist attack in the United States on American citizens, and thousands of a few thousand Americans died. People died that day. And so it makes me, it's always probably we say never forget about that day, right? And I will never forget. And so today I want to take the opportunity to remind you to never forget either. And when I say never forget, I mean like never forget the people, right, who lost their lives. That's what I mean. It's never forget the individuals who were just going about their day-to-day life, just living their life like it was any other day, right? They got up in the morning and they made their coffee or their tea or their whatever, fed their pet or went for their run, had their breakfast, got in their car, got on the train, kissed their partner goodbye, and we're living their life like any other day without any concept that they wouldn't return home that night, and without their partners and their children. ever having any concept that, that would be the last time that they saw them and their loved ones. And so for me, it's always kind of a, it's a day to remind ourselves, to never forget those individuals, right? And I hope that, if you knew somebody, if you lost somebody on that day, my condolences to you, and know that, many of us out here haven't forgotten, and we like to take the day to sort of, be reminded of those individuals, who lost their lives, and the individuals who sacrificed their lives, the first responders who went into those burning towers, the firefighters who died that day doing their jobs, and they do know going to work every day, that that's a reality for them, right? When you work as a firefighter, and your partners know that every day you're literally putting your life on the line, and that you might not, return home. I dated a wildland firefighter, and wildland firefighting is certainly different than structure fire, right? You're not like trapped in buildings, but there's still, a level pretty high risk that goes into wildland firefighting, just because winds can change. And I spent my summers living with him during the fire season, and so I certainly know what it's like to not know, if he's coming home and when he's coming home. So you get to know in those professions that there's, that's the reality of it. But still, we don't forget the firefighters and the first responders who went into that building with bravery and with courage, and who went in there, and did their jobs and didn't come home. So we don't forget those people, and I just want everybody I hope that people can pause, in their day, and just to remember those sacrifices, and to remember how fragile life is, how precious life is, and that things happen in life. And so, to me, it's a day that I think it still brings up a lot of feelings for a lot of people, right? So, and it's okay, as I was going to say, as a therapist, right? It's okay 24 years later to still have all the feelings. It's okay to still feel, very sad about that day, about the loss of life. Some people get fearful when they think about it. I, don't think that we should live in fear about it, but some people still do get very scared when they think about it. Some people still get really angry, when they think about it. So it's okay to have all the feelings, and the mixed feelings, and the confused feelings, right? But we still do go about living our lives, right? I mean, we should pause, and we should remember those who lost their lives. And to me, it's about, for the most part, keeping the focus on them, right? It's not about giving my attention to, terrorists and evildoers, and it's not about, allowing myself to get caught up in politics about it. It's just a day to remember everyday people from all branches of life, all walks of life, I'm sure all political backgrounds, right? All kinds of religious and non-religious folks who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001. And so for the most part, for me, I like to keep it, and I have for many years. I've really kept it about remembering, taking it as sort of a day and a moment in time to stop and think about, those who didn't come home. So I don't always talk about this individual and this story, because I don't like to really draw attention a lot away from those who lost their lives. But I do, because I have my YouTube channel, and because I am visually impaired. I have been my whole life. If you don't know it, if you've missed it, I have had 3 guide dogs in my life, 3 beautiful German Shepherd guide dogs. I got my first one at 17. I had guide dogs at my side for 17 years through all, through my senior year of high school, through 4 years of undergrad, all of graduate school, and beyond, right? Living my life in my 20s and dating and traveling and all those things that we do in our 20s, right? So I was really blessed with 3 amazing guide dogs, and I know what an incredible gift they are. But I also know what it's like to live with the visual impairment my whole life, and I know that that people have all kinds of ideas and misconceptions and about people who have visual impairments. And there's a high unemployment rate, which I'm not going to really get into today, but there's a high unemployment rate because a lot of people don't think about hiring visually impaired people. And so I did want to share with you and sort of use my platform and use my channel today to talk about there were 2 blind men who worked in the World Trade Center. They worked there like thousands of other people there. They worked at the World Trade Center, and both of these blind men had guide dogs. And they walked out of the World Trade Center as blind men. They walked down those stairs, and one of those men was a man named Mike Hingson, who was working on the 78th floor of the World Trade Center, and he had a beautiful little yellow Labrador guide dog with him named Russell. And he wasn't just working there, he was like, the manager in charge of his department and his office. And so he's totally blind, and he still is totally blind. Mike Hingson's still alive. He walked out with his guide dog. He walked out 78 floors out of the World Trade Center with his guide dog leading him and guiding him that day. And he has since traveled and told his story, and he's written his book. And so I just wanted to use today and to use my platform out here as a day to encourage people. If you're interested at all in guide dogs, if you're interested in learning, right, if you see me on my channel and you're interested at all in disabilities and understanding more of people's lives who have disabilities, I want to recommend his book, right? And like I said, I don't always do this on September 11th because I do like to keep the focus on those who lost their lives. But if you're looking for a survivor story of September 11th, if you're looking for a story of a real story, of a real person, of their experience, I would highly, highly recommend that book. It's available on Audible. I purchased it on Audible, and I listened to it more than once. In fact, I'm re-listening to it now. For me, it's just kind of one of those things that, I sometimes do during, this time of the year. Sometimes I want to re-listen to that book and remind myself of that date. And so he literally writes his memoir of his journey on September 11th, right? Of what it was like for him to go to work that day, of what he was doing in the office, just planning for a meeting, right? Like he was planning and organizing a meeting. They had people coming in. He was, making sure that they had the catering services and the beverages and all of that kind of stuff as a totally blind man, just doing his life. Like millions and millions of other people were doing that day and do every day. And so, it was his job, right, as the manager to, get the people to the elevator, to make decisions, to make sure that everybody was out of the floor and on their way, to the stairs, right? And, I'm sure that I'm going to just show you the book if anybody's interested in it. If I can get my, let's see here. Let me pull up my Audible app. Let's see if I can find it. There we go.
Maze Buds 2. Switch to Maze S21 Ultra.
Oh, wow. That's weird.
Camera.
So my
Off.
earbuds
Flash
just
button.
switched
Double tap to
devices.
activate.
Okay. So this is the book, Thunderdog. That's the name of the book. It's called Thunderdog by Mike Hinkson. And I just want people to see it. So it's got the yellow Labrador on the cover. If you're interested, I'm going to turn this off and hopefully I don't know if my earbuds are going to transfer back to this phone or not. I don't know what they're. That's very strange to me. I did not expect my earbuds to immediately transfer. If you don't know that, if you just realize that I use a screen reader myself as somebody who's visually impaired, and so my phone it reads stuff out to me. And so that's why I'm trying really hard to wear an earbud so that you don't have to hear the screen reader, because my text messages and notifications and all kinds of anything and everything that comes across my phone will get read out loud to y'all. And I prefer to not have that because, it can be personal text messages, it can be weather alerts, it can be news notifications for, product recalls and, just all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, what? It's like, why my phone, or Yahoo News or CBS News or Fox News or whoever thinks I need to know that right now at this very moment is beyond me. So I try to wear the earbuds so you don't have to hear that. But you might hear it now because my phone may have decided that you need to. I don't know if there's any way. I don't know if there's any way that I can reactivate. Let me take it out of my ear, put it in the case. Let me try that. Let me see if we can outsmart the earbuds. Okay. We'll take them out, put them in the case, and then reactivate them maybe? Okay. I don't know which phone they connected to now. I don't know if they reconnected to the old, that's my old phone, or if they reconnected to the new phone that you all are on. You're on my new phone, which isn't actually new, right? I mean, it's, a year and a half old now, but the other one's even older, so anyways, I was talking about that book, and I do sometimes reread it. Not every year. I don't reread it every year in September, but maybe every few years when I'm thinking about it, when it's on my mind, I'll think about it, and I'll be like, yeah, you know what, I should reread that book this year. So if you are interested at all in guide dogs, first of all, if you're interested in guide dogs at all, it's a great look at life with a guide dog, right? It's a look. He goes through his whole day of that day, where he literally, like, you're in the stairwell with him, right? He walked out 78 floors, walked down 78 floors with this guide dog, and it's his story of what was going through his mind, right? What kept him mentally, right, during that day, what it was like, the smells, what he was hearing, some of the visuals that were described to him, the sounds, the smells, the sensations of being in the building when it was hit. There's so much there that I don't think we could really truly grasp, from just the news clips. I mean, I feel like the news was just over and over and over on replay. That's what we all saw for like days, right? With literally just the footage of the planes hitting the towers. But it was like, that's what we saw, and then we were all traumatized, right? But at the same time, it was like, yes, there were some stories. And Mike Hinkson was interviewed that week, right? It happened on a Tuesday. And he talks about it in that book. By that Friday, he was there doing an interview, with Larry King. So he was one of the more, one of the stories that got national attention without a doubt. But, you just can't quite get all of that information, from a, 10-minute, CNN interview, you can't get the inside experience of what it was like for somebody in that stairwell, right? And then walking after they got out of the building, that, far from over, right? It was far from over. Just getting out of the building and down the stairwell was by no means the end of it. Then he's talking about walking down the street and all of a sudden hearing a police officer shout at them, like, it's coming down, like, run, it's coming down. And so then he was there on the street when the buildings came down, and he can describe very well, even as a blind man, he knew that there was just dust in the air and debris, the grittiness, of what the air was like to breathe in, to walk in. He had the full experience, and it's described in great detail in that book for anybody who might be interested in that type of story. And I don't mean any disrespect if you lost somebody in that on September 11th. I don't mean any disrespect to take attention at all away from anybody who lost their lives, but I also think it's okay to tell the stories of the survivors, right? Of the people who walked out, and what that experience was like. And it also gives you a really inside peek to what guide dog work is like and what life is like as a blind person. And I'm not totally blind, but I am blind in the sunlight, and I can only see very short distances and all that kind of a thing. So, had I been there, my experiences certainly would have been different, just because we're different people, right? We're all different, and yet some of those experiences would have definitely been the same. The sounds, the smells, the not knowing, and most of us can't imagine what it was like. I'll never be able to imagine it, and I hope that I never do. I hope I never have the experience to experience something like that. So anyways, I just thought I would take this opportunity today to say, I haven't forgotten those individuals who lost their lives, but also to educate people and to recommend a book to you if you're at all interested in learning more about blindness and more about disabilities, learning more about guide dogs. I think that's a really good read. I still get pretty emotional about it. And I think Mike is such a great example of showing people that blind people do have careers, right? We do go to work. I talked about how I worked in mental health as a therapist. He worked as a manager in his department, and he had responsibilities to get people out of the building, to get the computer shut down, to get the equipment turned off. They had no idea. He thought he was going back to work, just like thousands and thousands of other people who left that building that day. They thought they were going to return to their offices, So, they were taking care to shut things down and take care of things. And he also really, shows you what it takes, the skills that he developed as a blind man, mainstreamed in public school with parents who allowed him to experience life, right? His parents didn't shelter him. His parents allowed him to experience life. And so, it shows you that he was able to really develop the skills throughout his life to stay calm and to get through that day with humor. He used his sense of humor, as he often does in life, right? Told a few jokes that people kind of wanted to just, lighten the mood a little bit. And he even was able to bring support and comfort to two people that day. There was a woman ahead of him, he talks about in the book, in the stairwell, who had like a temporary like panic attack, or she froze and she was like, I'm not gonna make it, we can't do this, right? And I imagine she wasn't the only person who had those thoughts, right? We're not gonna make it. And so he talked about how they handled it, and that they just paused, right? People didn't get angry. People didn't get pushy. They just paused to comfort her. And he was one of those people who, was able to offer her comfort. He's able to offer hugs. He was able to allow her to to pet his guide dog for a few minutes, which, most of us know you're not supposed to do, right? But he knew that that little Labrador would be able to offer comfort to somebody who desperately needed comfort in that moment, right? And sometimes we have to do things that way in life, and so he was able to do that. And he talks about his encounters with the firefighters on the stairwells, and how he, allowed them also to, we didn't allow them, but, they were petting his guide dog. He talks about that. And he also talks about, being on the street after the building came down, and how there was, just dust and debris everywhere. And that just created a whole nother level of confusion for people, right? Because now all of a sudden you've got so much dust in the air that sighted people can't see, right? I mean, Mike's the blind guy, and sighted people are now all over the streets of New York, panicked again, anxious again, because, now they can't see, and there's a whole nother level of chaos and confusion going on. And so, there he is on the streets of New York with his guide dog, and he runs into a woman who's very afraid because she's got so much dust in her eyes that she can't see, right? And so Mike's able to say to her, "Hi, I'm Mike, and I'm blind, and I have a guide dog," right? And he was able to talk to her. He was able to comfort her. He's able to offer her a hug and say, "Why don't you walk with us?" Right? He had a guide dog, and they were maneuvering just fine. He didn't, they had to kind of navigate together, but he was able to offer her that hug and offer her that comfort, in be a leader over and over that day. He had developed the skills throughout his life, right, that allowed him to not only survive, right, walking out of the World Trade Center, but navigating the chaos afterwards, doing it with grace, doing it with humor, and doing it in a way that, he was able to help others as well. And those are just some of the things that I love about that book. Is it really can make you stop and pause and think about, what kind of a person am I going to be in a crisis, right? How am I going to respond in a crisis? When somebody's in a situation, or we're in a situation, how am I going to handle that? How am I going to step up and help others who might be panicked, who might be anxious, who might be afraid in that moment, even when I don't know, even when it's a hard situation for me, right? Who am I going to be to others? Even when it's uncertain for me, right? Who am I going to be to others? And he was able to do that and offer hugs, right? He just openly, offered hugs to strangers that day, because you know what? In the city of New York, which is really, people in New York don't just hug strangers on the street. That's not what they do in New York, right? They kind of keep their heads down, right? And now, they used to be absorbed in their newspapers, and now they're absorbed in their devices, and they just want to get to their office, without engagement, without confrontation. You get like a polite nod, but for the most part, people just want to get, from point A to point B, to get on their train and get off their train and get into their office and go about their life, right? On the streets of New York, you don't have strangers hugging each other, right? That's not really how things work in New York. But in that day, in that moment, in that crisis, he shares and he tells his story of how he was able to do that, and how he was able to help people during that day and really step up. He had the character and the skills and the leadership, to serve and to help others, and to be supportive. And I think it's just such it's a great story, I think, to help, not only just to educate people about guide dogs and disabilities, that yes, we go to work, yes, we live in the world, we function, we do our jobs, we commute on the trains. He talks about, his commute on the train and him having to get home, and, that day, and how they had to wait for trains to be running again, and they didn't know where they were gonna go, and having to stay with people, and then once they found out the trains were running, it was like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. So he really takes you through the whole day. So if you're somebody who likes those kinds of stories, if you're somebody who likes those kinds of books, then I want to recommend it to you. I just wanted to take this opportunity. I should finish this round, but I think we've chatted enough today, right? It's probably been long enough, but I just wanted to take this opportunity today to remind people, that yes, it's okay to have the feelings today, right? The therapist in me wants to say to people, it's okay to have the feelings today. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to say, what we haven't forgotten. The people, right, who lost their lives just going about life every day. It's a day to kind of make us all pause and be a little bit reflective, and remind ourselves that we're here today, right? We're here today. So, but it's not a day to be fearful, in my opinion, anyways. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that with all of you. So say hello in the comment section, right? Let me know your thoughts on the video. Let me know if you've read the book. Let me know if you're interested now in reading the book. Because to me, it's a great, even as somebody who's had guide dogs for 17 years, it was still a really good read for me. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to share that with some of you all. I really hope that you are doing well, that you're having a good day, and you will see the skirt that hopefully this top, we hope, I don't know, you guys, when I design things, it's a mystery. It really is. I worked this over and over and over, and this is really going to be too big on me. It is. I've already tried it on. It's going to be too big on me. So I don't know if this top is ever going to be an FO, a finished object, or if it will get fraud, because it is too big. But anyways, you will see the skirt, though. The skirt is an FO, okay? And you're going to see it tomorrow for Finish It Friday. So hope you all are well and that you have a great weekend. One more day, right? One more day. Alrighty, well, thanks so much for listening, and until next time, happy stitching. Bye bye for now.
Pause button.